killed Jason Blossom? That is the mystery to be solved in the show Riverdale.
Paint the pictures.
Now, if you've ever watched my channel before, then you know that there's one thing that I cannot resist, and that is a teen drama about a small town where someone gets murdered. Preferably, a teenager. Can I solve Riverdale before the reveal? This is not a recap of the show Riverdale. This is me watching the show for the very first time and trying to solve the big mystery before the show reveals it. So after every couple episodes that I watch, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to discuss the different clues, theories, and suspects that I have. And during each section, I will lock in a guess of who I think killed Jason Blossom. That way, at the end of this video, we can go back and we can see exactly how close or how far I was throughout. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into episode 1 and see if we can solve Riverdale before the reveal. I just watched episode 1 of Riverdale, and needless to say, we have a lot to discuss. Now, this show is a teen drama, which means that the teens are going to be dramatic. The hardest part about doing these videos is trying to decipher the difference between what is important to the mystery and what is just teen drama plot. Which brings us to our very first question. What is the mystery that we are trying to solve? So let's break it down, shall we? On the 4th of July, Jason Blossom and his twin sister, Cheryl Blossom, are going to Sweetwater River for a little, morning boat ride. Next thing you know, the Boy Scouts stumble upon Cheryl, who is like on the edge of the water, soaking wet. Cheryl says that she dropped her white glove into the water. Jason reached over to get it out of the water for her, tipping the boat. Next thing you know, they're both in the water. She's washing up on shore. She has no idea where her brother is. She claims that when he got into the water, he must have panicked and drowned. So the cops start looking for him in the river. They're looking for his body by, I think they call it like dredging the lake, or no, that's not right. They're searching the river. They can't find the body, so they just have like an empty casket funeral for him. Seems like a pretty straightforward accident, right? Wrong. There is so much suspicious stuff going around that it leads me to believe, and I know this might seem crazy, there might be more to this than just an accidental drowning. Plus, something happens at the end of this first episode that pretty much confirms it. So now that we know the mystery that we are trying to solve, who killed Jason Blossom, let's talk about all of our characters that are at play, and then we can break down suspects and some theories. In a show based on Archie comics, it's safe to assume we all know the main character of this show, Archie. But here's the thing about Archie. He's hot. I know, he's got abs and everything. In fact, at one point in this episode, someone calls Archie Justin Gingerlake.
It's just read my glossed lips, Justin Gingerlake.
So, it's a great start. Well, here's the thing about Archie. Archie spent the summer working construction for his dad. And while he's spending his long days pouring concrete, he's writing these poems in his head. But these weren't just poems. They're songs. He's a songwriter now. He's not just a football player. He has more depth than that. But writing songs and pouring concrete were not the only things he was doing that summer. Oh no. He was also doing Miss Grundy, his music teacher. No wonder he has such a sudden interest in music. He got to hear high notes for the very first time with a Juilliard-trained singer. This is Miss Grundy. Side note, why does every teen drama have a student sleeping with a teacher? Anyway, we'll talk about Archie and Miss Grundy more later, but first, let's move on to our other main characters, starting with Betty Cooper. Betty is best friends with Archie. However, she's also in love with Archie, but he doesn't feel the same way. And that's kind of the subplot of this whole first episode. It's a bit of a will they, won't they kind of thing, you know? We meet Veronica, who is the new girl in town. She's a rich girl from New York City, but her and her mom have moved to Riverdale for a new start. She is tired of being the mean girl, and in this new town, she wants to be nice. She pretty much immediately becomes friends with Betty, because Betty's the one who's showing her around, and Betty's an angel. Veronica also has a crush on Archie, don't we all? But Veronica is a good friend, and Veronica pushes Betty to go and tell Archie how she feels. But that doesn't work out great. Betty panics when asking him to the school dance and also invites Veronica with them. So now they're going as like a trio, which is fine. But then Archie kind of officially rejects Betty at the dance, and that's just no fun. Then after the party, they're at an after party, which takes place after the original party. And Veronica and Archie get tricked by Cheryl, who's a real mean lady. They get tricked into doing 7 minutes in heaven in a closet. I cannot stress to you enough, this is only episode 1, and we are already reaching maximum levels of teen drama. Betty is heartbroken because she feels betrayed. She runs away. Archie tries to find her, and they talk about their feelings. Archie loves her, just as a best friend. Since we're talking about Veronica, we should talk about why her and her mom have moved to Riverdale. Her dad is in jail. Her father is Hiram Lodge. She's Veronica Lodge. Hiram just got arrested for embezzlement and like scamming people out of money. So he's on trial. And so Veronica's mom takes Veronica and they move to Riverdale, which is where I believe the parents are from. So Veronica's mom takes her and they move to Riverdale, you know, to get away from all the press and the chaos from being celebrities under fire. We also find out that Veronica's mom, who is this lady right here, back in high school, Veronica's mom used to go out with Archie's dad, Fred. I think this is the kind of thing where like all of the parents in this show went to high school together and like grew up together when they were kids, and then now all of their kids are growing up together, you know, small town things. Then there's Cheryl. Cheryl is the mean girl at school. She's the head of the cheerleading squad. She is terribly mean to Betty, and she really seems to be relishing all of this attention that she is getting from her brother's death, which makes her suspicious. We meet Jughead. Now, Jughead, we don't see a lot of him in this episode, but he is narrating the episode. He's like a loner type character. He's writing a book about what happened to Jason that summer. So that's kind of where he ties in. Oh, and we found out that Jughead and Archie used to be best friends, but I think they've had some sort of falling out. This is Betty's mom. And the important thing to remember about Betty's mom is that she sucks, dude. She is really wild. And it seems like the reason that she's so like controlling and really mean can be tied back to Jason Blossom, who is, you know, if you're not keeping up, Jason is the dead kid. In fact, when it's like first announced to everyone that Jason Blossom is presumed drowned, she says to her husband, this guy, she says, "I hope he suffered. May Jason Blossom burn in hell." That is a pretty wild thing to say about a young boy who has just died. But we do find out the reason that she hates him, or hated him. He's dead. Turns out Betty has a sister who was dating Jason. But then she had a mental breakdown and got like sent away to a group home. Now, Betty has her own opinions about this whole situation with her sister. She does agree that her sister had a breakdown and that Jason was a problem, but she thinks the real reason that she got sent away and had a breakdown in the first place is because of her mom, who, as we've established, sucks. Now, we need to keep an eye on Betty's mom, but I believe that she's probably our first red herring. A red herring is a character that the story pushes to the forefront as a major suspect so that you're too busy looking at them and you're not paying attention to who actually did it here in the background. And I think that's what Betty's mom is at this point. I mean, it would be pretty wild if I spent the rest of this season of Riverdale trying to solve who killed Jason Blossom. And the big reveal was the lady who said that she hopes he burns in hell within like the first 3 minutes of the episode. And I mean, that's pretty much all of the major characters that we really meet in this episode. Here's Kevin. He's the sheriff's son. This is the sheriff over here. Kevin is best friends with Betty. Betty has a lot of best friends. There's Josie and the Pussycats, who are like the school's like most popular musicians, I guess. I guess schools have those. I'm assuming that they're not really a big part of the whole mystery of the show. I'm assuming they have something to do with Archie's I Want to Be a Singer storyline. So I didn't even put, there's no Pussycats on the wall. Who do we think killed Jason? But Chase, how do we know if anyone killed Jason? I thought he drowned. Well, my dear audience, a few things happen in this episode that lead me to believe that Jason Blossom did not drown. Jason Blossom was murdered. Like, we find out that Jason was a part of the water polo team, which makes it a bit weird that the second he fell into some water, he panicked and drowned. And if that's not good enough evidence for you, at the end of this episode, we find Jason's body with a bullet hole in his head. So, safe to say he didn't drown. But you know what? Let's break that down real quick. So on the 4th of July, Jason and Cheryl got on a boat and went out onto Sweetwater River. Then, next thing you know, Cheryl washes up on shore saying that the boat tipped over and that Jason had drowned. We also find out that Archie and Miss Grundy were cuddled up near Sweetwater River that morning, and they heard a gunshot go off around 6 a.m. Now, it's safe to assume that this is the gunshot that shot Jason Blossom. But they're not able to tell people that they were together at 6 a.m. near some woods. With the whole her being a teacher thing. They can't tell anyone what they heard. So what's the deal here? Why would Cheryl claim that her brother tipped over and drowned, and the next thing you know, like a week later, we see Jason with a bullet hole in his head? Now, we have a few theories that just kind of come up from this very question. Number one, did Cheryl shoot her twin brother in the head? Then she tried to make it look like an accidental drowning? I'm going to be honest, I don't think that that's super likely. That seems a little bit too obvious, but hey, you never know. Another theory is that he did fall off the boat and, she thought he did drown, but he didn't. He washed up further down the river just like how she did. Maybe he just washed up somewhere else. And maybe when he washed up on the shore, wherever, he saw something that he wasn't supposed to see. And someone shot him to keep him from running off and telling everybody what he saw. Here's what I think he could have potentially seen. First up, we know that Veronica's dad, Hiram, who's not on the board because we don't know what he looks like, but he is a criminal who is in jail for fraud and embezzlement and stuff. And I think he's like some sort of mafia boss or something. At one point in the episode, Veronica says that he is the devil incarnate. Now, she's not saying that, but she's implying that that's what a lot of people think about him. Perhaps he has criminal dealings in Riverdale, and when Jason just washed up on the shore, maybe Jason stumbled into a business dealing. And he saw something that he wasn't supposed to see, something illegal, and so, boom, dead. My other theory about what Jason could have seen that morning comes with how his body was found. Now, Kevin, the sheriff's son, he's the one who finds the body. You see, Kevin was meeting up with a football player named Moose, and they were going to hook up in the woods. But they had to, hook up in secret because Moose is not openly gay like Kevin. It's a whole thing. Moose is on the football team. But anyway, they're headed to the woods to hook up and they stumble upon Jason Blossom's body. My theory is if this is the hookup spot where Moose, who, is a closeted gay guy, hooks up with people, maybe Jason washed up right there, saw Moose hooking up with someone. Jason is a part of the football team. So maybe Moose, in a panic to keep his secret, shoots and kills Jason Blossom. Or maybe it wasn't even Moose. Maybe it could be a different closeted person. I do think that this is a pretty solid theory just due to a couple of the themes in this episode. The whole plot point of Moose not wanting to get found out about his sexual activities in the woods near Sweetwater River are very parallel to Miss Grundy not wanting people to find out about her sexual activity near Sweetwater River. That seems to be a common theme we're seeing in the episode. People not wanting to be found out about what they were doing at Sweetwater River the morning of July 4th. My only other theory about why Cheryl would say that he drowned when he obviously didn't is maybe she is involved, but she is not the one who killed him. Maybe she was a part of the plan to set him up. It was her job to tip the boat, have him wash up on the shore at a certain place so that he could be shot by the person who actually wants to kill him. Or maybe it was like an assisted suicide situation, and that's why Cheryl doesn't seem exactly too beat up about her brother's death, because she was kind of in on the plan. I'm not really sure. These are just ideas. I don't have anything concrete. I will say this, though. At the end of the episode where Jason's body is found with a bullet hole, Cheryl looks really confused. So I'm thinking maybe she didn't know that he was shot. But we do have some pretty solid first suspects on the board. We have our boy Moose. We've got Cheryl. We've got Betty's mom. We have Veronica's dad. Now, I will say, since he is currently on trial and in jail, I don't think that I don't think it's possible that he actually did the killing, because I don't know if I don't think you get field trips when you're in prison for embezzlement to go kill kids and then come back. But, I don't know what Archie Comics' universe's prison system's like. So, I could be wrong. I do have one last theory, and this is the theory that I'm pretty sure I'm going to lock in as my guess for episode 1 of Who Killed Jason Blossom. A major plot point of this first episode is about Betty's sister. And Betty's sister's relationship with Jason, which led her to having a mental breakdown and having to go live at a group home. What happened in this relationship? What caused the breakdown? Why was she sent away? What did Jason do? Was it bad enough that one of her family members, like her mom, would want revenge? Or maybe Betty's sister would want revenge. Maybe it's a lover's scorned type situation. Maybe Jason washed up on the shore and Betty's sister was there waiting to get her revenge. I think this is our strongest theory at this point, just due to the amount of times that they mentioned this situation during this episode. I mean, Betty's mom is as harsh and mean as she is due to Jason's relationship with Betty's sister. Betty and Cheryl themselves have several words throughout this episode where they're bickering about the relationship between their siblings. And Cheryl even tries to goad Betty into snapping over it, making some remarks to make Betty lose it, but Betty keeps it under control. I'm assuming that Cheryl does that because she feels guilty about whatever her brother did to Betty's sister. We just don't know what that is yet. And plus, we never actually meet Betty's sister in this episode. We just hear an absolute ton about her. That means that she must be pretty important. So, for episode 1 of Riverdale, I am locking in Betty's sister as Jason Blossom's killer.
Riverdale is the best new drama of the season.
Yes.
It's brooding and sexy.
Very hot.
And
There's more?
much more.
It's a national obsession waiting to happen.
I just watched episode 2 and 3, and we have a lot to talk about. So first, let's start with what I had locked in as my main guess for episode 1, which was Betty's sister, whose name is Polly. Now, we still haven't met Polly, but we constantly hear about Polly. Now, my theory was that Polly, who was done wrong by Jason somehow, got revenge and killed Jason. Well, in episode 2, someone brings up that exact theory in the episode. In fact, Cheryl brings it up, Jason's sister, twin sister. So, stronger connection. And Cheryl is actually pressing Betty to figure out what Betty knows about what went down between Polly and Jason. But Betty doesn't know anything about it, and neither does Cheryl, apparently. So this tells us 2 things. One, since the show brought up the theory in the episode, it's pretty likely that that is not the actual answer. You know, my theory is probably wrong. They wouldn't just blatantly say the solution to the mystery randomly in the first couple episodes of the season. The second thing that this tells us is that whatever went down between Jason and Polly must be a pretty big deal, because they have really hyped it up and only the parents seem to know what actually happened. And since the parents are the only ones that know what happened, I assume that means that the parents are going to quickly become a bigger role in the show, because the teenagers don't know shit. Another theory that I brought up in the last part of the video was maybe Cheryl had something to do with her twin brother's death. That also gets brought up in this episode. Almost immediately in episode 2, Cheryl is being pressed by like 2 of her mean girl posse mates, and they're like asking Cheryl straight up why she said her brother drowned and then her brother showed up with a gunshot wound. Essentially posing the same exact question that I was asking in the last part of this video. Cheryl gets very upset at this questioning and goes, "Do you think I had something to do with my brother's death?" Well, turns out she kinda did, but not in the way that we think. We learn that Jason was running away. He wanted to get out of Riverdale and he did not want his parents coming after him. So he got his twin sister Cheryl to help him fake his death. They went out on the boat. She took him to the other side of the river. He got off. They said goodbye. Jason told Cheryl that he would contact her soon, before a month is up, to let her know that he is safe. And then Cheryl gets back in the boat, takes it back into the river, flips it, and claims that he drowned. The autopsy report on Jason's body finds out that Jason did not die on July 4th, the morning that we all thought that he had died. He actually died a week later. So the cops obviously questioned Cheryl and were like, "Yo, what is up?" And she sticks to her story. She tells them exactly what I just told you. And she insists that she never saw him again after that morning. She had been waiting for him to contact her until his body was found, and she realized that he would not be contacting her. Another thing that the autopsy report showed was that Jason's body had been frozen, like he had like frostbite on his fingers. So I don't know what that means. So with the new information that we have gathered, we need to figure out what went down from the morning of July 4th when Jason faked his death and a week later where he's found with a gunshot wound. And let me just say, this show is heating up quick because guess what? If Jason didn't die until a week after the July 4th, then what was up with the gunshot that Archie and Miss Grundy heard on the morning of July 4th? Well, we do get an answer to that as well in these episodes. It turns out that the leader of the Boy Scout troop, who is the one that discovered Cheryl that morning after washing up on the shore, he was just firing guns. He was like trying to teach his Boy Scout troop like how to shoot to defend themselves or something like that. And Jughead, who now writes for the school newspaper with Betty, he finds this out. He's kind of our lead detective, our film noir gumshoe, if you will. He finds this out and he's going to write about it in the school paper, the Blue and Gold. But the Boy Scout troop leader, his name is Dilton. I think it's like Dilton Doily or something like that. Dilton begs him not to tell anyone. Because if it's found out that he was teaching his Boy Scouts how to shoot guns, he'll get kicked out of the Boy Scouts and he'll get like charged for a misdemeanor or something like that. So he makes a deal with Betty and Jughead saying that if they don't tell anyone that he was the one that shot a gun that morning on July 4th, then he would give them some information that no one else knows. They agree to the deal, and Dilton tells them that on that morning he saw Miss Grundy's car near Sweetwater River. We know what Miss Grundy was doing that morning, and Jughead knows what Miss Grundy was doing, or should I say who Miss Grundy was doing that morning. Our red-headed Superman, Archiekins. So it does appear that Archie and Miss Grundy's relationship is probably going to be exposed in the next couple of episodes. But you know what? While we're talking about Miss Grundy, let's go ahead and talk about what's been going on with that whole storyline. Basically, the whole thing is that Archie feels terribly guilty that he heard a gunshot that morning and he cannot go to the police and tell them because then he would expose him and Miss Grundy's relationship. And Grundy is very dead set, like, we cannot tell anyone. If they find out that we were together, we will both be arrested. And I'm watching that and I'm like, bitch, you are the one sleeping with a student. Archie's a victim. Anyways, the guilt is too much for Archie. And so after Cheryl gets arrested and brought in for questioning, because of the whole, she claimed he was drowned and then they found a gunshot wound. Well, she tells the police that her and Jason heard a gunshot go off that morning and the police do not believe her. So Archie cannot take the guilt anymore. He has to tell the police that he heard it too, corroborating her story and essentially getting Cheryl set free. But Archie is very careful to not mention that Miss Grundy was also there. However, Miss Grundy is still not happy that he did this because now Archie is involved in a murder investigation and she is afraid that the attention that he has brought onto himself might cause her to be put under the microscope. Now, here's my theory. It is framed that the reason she's worried that she's going to get some attention put on her and Archie is because of their relationship. But I think she doesn't want the law enforcement to look too much into her because she might be a criminal. Well, in more ways than one. Because of the whole Archie being 16 thing. My theory is that if Miss Grundy is sleeping with one red-headed football player from her school, maybe she was sleeping with a different red-headed football player from her school. Jason. Here's what I think, and I think that this could also tie into the whole Polly situation as well. Jason and Polly were dating. While they were dating, Jason and Miss Grundy started hooking up. Polly finds out that Jason is sleeping with a teacher and has a breakdown. Not only was the love of her life cheating on her, but the guilt of not being able to expose the relationship due to the implications of what that might do to Jason. I mean, it could ruin his life if it came out he was sleeping with a teacher. So she keeps it a secret. It does too much to her. She kind of just combusts. She spirals and gets sent to a group home, probably because of her mom's constant berating and pressuring. Meanwhile, Jason feels terrible about what happened because he does love Polly. He was just taken advantage of by a really hot teacher. He tries to end things with Miss Grundy so that he can go and fix things with Polly. But Miss Grundy is obsessed with him. He can't leave her. Who does he think he is? It gets to the point where Jason cannot get away from Miss Grundy, so he feels like he needs to fake his death. Grundy finds out about this plan, and that's why she wanted to be at Sweetwater River that morning with Archie. It's kind of an alibi. It's not a great alibi because she's committing a different crime, but what do you want to get busted for? Sleeping with Archie or shooting a child? Archie leaves that morning. Miss Grundy goes into the woods, finds Jason, knocks him out, kidnaps him. Maybe she drugs him or something. I don't know. She takes him back to her place and tortures him for the next week for trying to leave her. And ultimately kills him in a kind of like, if I can't have you, nobody can kind of way. Is that not a great theory, dude? Like, I just think I nailed it. I mean, it ties in the whole Polly storyline that we've been hearing so much about. It ties in the Grundy sleeping with her student situation. Now, I will admit, we're only a few episodes in. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. But for the information we have so far, kind of a home run. But if that's not good enough for you, don't worry. We have other suspects and theories, like Betty's mom. Betty's mom somehow gets worse in these couple of episodes. And something in particular happens in episode 3 that makes me believe, is she even just a major red herring, or is she just the killer? You see, Betty's parents own the town newspaper, right? And they have been doing some pretty unethical things surrounding Jason Blossom's death in the newspaper. Like, for example, they paid off the coroner and leaked the autopsy report front page, which caused by doing that, this is Cheryl and Jason's mom, Penelope. She actually slaps Betty's mom in the face at this party thing. And Jason and Cheryl's mom is like, he was tortured and shot and thrown in the river like garbage. How dare you treat him like this? And hey, fair point. That is messed up. I mean, Betty's mom really sucks. I mean, Betty herself even confronts her mom and is like, Mom, what are you doing with the paper? This is not good. But Betty's mom defends herself by being like, people love the coverage. Betty's mom is like the TMZ of Riverdale, where it's like, hey, we're not the bad guys. You're the ones reading it. If there wasn't a demand for it, we wouldn't exist. What does TMZ even stand for? What could the Z possibly stand for? Anyway, here's my theory. They live in a small town where not many things happen. I imagine print media not doing great in Riverdale, just like the rest of the world in 2017. So they're having a hard time selling newspapers. And Betty's parents need something exciting to help them sell more papers and save their business. So they take Jason, who they already hate due to his relationship with their daughter. They kill him and use his death as a way to save their newspaper. It's a very Scooby-Doo thing to do, But instead of like dressing up as a monster and scaring people in the town in order to sell more newspapers, they killed a teenager. Another theory we get comes from Betty's mom herself. She says, and I quote, "The Blossoms are pure evil. I wouldn't be surprised if they sacrificed that boy themselves. A sacrifice to some pagan god that they worship." Now, obviously, that seems a little bit hyperbolic. I don't think that there's any pagan gods that are being worshipped, but you never know. But there is a very real disdain that Betty's family has with Cheryl's family, the Blossoms. And I'm assuming it's because of whatever went down between Polly and Jason, which we still don't know, but it had to have been pretty big because these families hate each other. But that brings up another point, especially about the Blossoms. We don't see a lot from them. This is Cheryl's parents, mom and dad. Like we kind of only see them drag Cheryl out of the school after her whole situation of lying and helping her brother fake his death. But we haven't really seen them do anything bad. Like, the Coopers definitely seem like the bad guys in this situation. I mean, they're leaking Jason's autopsy in the newspaper, so it's like they're the only ones that we've seen do something blatantly wrong so far. But that being said, we do not know what went down between Polly and Jason, so maybe it's bad enough that it offsets whatever retaliation that the Coopers are giving them. Also, Cheryl seems to truly love her brother. And I do believe that she is genuinely devastated by the loss of her twin. And Cheryl's mom is very obviously shaken by the whole ordeal. Because she like slaps Betty's mom in front of everyone at this very fancy party. The family just hasn't done anything to make me suspicious of them. Whereas the Coopers, very suspicious people. Kevin, as we know, is the sheriff's son, and he has a line in this episode that leads me to believe that maybe Kevin himself could be a suspect. He's talking about like the whole gang, Archie and friends, but he says, "My dad says that everyone is a suspect, even me." Kevin is the one who stumbles upon Jason's body. Maybe Kevin ditched the body right there and then later brought Moose with him to discover the body. So it's like, oh, no one suspects Kevin. I'm the one that stumbled upon this body. I didn't know this was here. Ask Moose. He was with me. That's all I have for that theory. I'm going to be honest. Doesn't hold that much water. Unlike Jason. But I will say, for a side character, Kevin is around a lot. He's a funny guy. He often has some of my favorite lines in the episodes. And we should always be suspicious of people who are generally well-liked in a murder mystery. The least suspected character is oftentimes the murderer. Yeah, I don't know, but I will say that at one point Cheryl says the line, my twin telepathy is telling me that the killer is someone that we all know. And I think that we should really take that to heart as an audience. I think the reveal is going to be someone that we see very often in this show. But we could probably take out our 4 main characters as suspects. Archie is not going to be Jason Blossom's killer. You know, there's a lot of seasons of this show, and Archie's kind of important. Betty's not going to be the killer. Veronica's not going to be the killer, and Jughead is not going to be the killer. But everyone else on here, up for grabs. The only thing that is really left to talk about from these episodes is during episode 3, there's this whole plot line where this guy, Chuck, is a scumbag. Basically, it's this whole thing. Football team, has a record of their sexual conquests, as they put it. And the captain of the team, Chuck, who is the coach's son, he's kind of like the ringleader, and he's harassed a lot of girls at school. And that really comes to a head when he claims that he slept with Veronica and starts slut shaming her at school. So a bunch of girls who are victims of this situation, they team up to help expose the football team for what they've been doing. During this whole thing, they find the actual record book where they write down who slept with who and how many points it is. And we see that Jason had put Polly in the book. That's pretty devastating, and it causes Cheryl to actually apologize to Betty for whatever her brother did. It gets pretty wild too. Betty puts on a wig and a scandalous outfit and almost drowns Chuck in a hot tub after drugging him and pouring maple syrup all over him. Betty does kind of lose it. She calls herself Polly and she calls Chuck Jason. It's a weird lapse in judgment, but Chuck did deserve it. I mean, he needed to learn a lesson about how he treats people. Then Betty reports the whole thing in the school paper, which causes Chuck to get suspended from school and kicked off the team. Then Jughead's narration at the end of the episode implies that Chuck is going to be a problem. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. Because usually I try not to talk about the storylines that are going on that don't really have anything to do with the murder mystery. And that's the same reason that I haven't been bringing up Archie and his songwriting career. But in case you're dying to know how that's going, Archie is working with Josie and the Pussycats because he wants to help them write songs. And then he helps them write a song for a big performance at the school. And Archie's dad is starting to accept him becoming a musician. But back to important things. For episodes 2 and 3 of Riverdale, I am going to be locking in my theory that Miss Grundy killed Jason Blossom. I do really think that I'm cooking with that theory of her being obsessed with Jason. And that could be, they a few times people point out how much Archie and Jason look alike. It's mostly just the red hair, but that would explain why she's so fascinated with Archie now, because she's he reminds her of Jason. All right, moving on.
Miss Grundy showed up in Riverdale out of thin air.
Everything about her is a huge question mark.
Geraldine Grundy died 7 years ago.
We found a gun.
What if she had something to do with Jason's murder?
Who are you?
I just watched episodes 4 and 5, and I've noticed a trend that seems to keep happening to me in this video. The show is definitely smarter than I think it is, and definitely than I thought it was. It's been slowly walking me with a leash this entire time. I think I'm being clever and I'm coming up with these really good theories, but then I get to the next episode and I find out that the show is actually one step ahead of me and it wanted me to think what I thought. Does that make sense? Let me go back to, remember my theory where I was maybe Betty's sister Polly had something to do with Jason's death. Maybe it was a revenge thing. Then in the very next episode after I locked in that theory, Cheryl brings up that exact theory in the episode, essentially saying that that is not the answer. And this time was no different. I thought I was really cooking with this theory about Miss Grundy, and then in these episodes, they blatantly point out that same theory. In episode 4, Betty now knows that Archie and Miss Grundy are sleeping together, and so Betty is starting to investigate the whole situation. She finds out that Miss Grundy was doing an independent study with Jason Blossom before he died. So when we find out that information, I'm like, dude, I'm killing it. I totally called that. So then Betty keeps digging into Miss Grundy and finds out that Miss Grundy didn't exist before last year. All of her social media, like her LinkedIn, any news articles about her start 1 year ago. So then, obviously, Betty and Veronica break into Miss Grundy's car to see what they can find. And they find a gun and a driver's license telling us Miss Grundy's real name, which is Jennifer Gibson. So Betty and Veronica go to Archie and they're like, dude, your super inappropriate relationship with our teacher is even more inappropriate now because she might have killed Jason Blossom. And so Archie runs to Grundy, or whatever her name is, and confronts her about it. And she gives him an explanation. She tells Archie that the reason that she changed her name and has a gun and moved to Riverdale a year ago is because she had an abusive ex-husband. She has been running away from him and, trying not to be found by him. And our dear Archiekins buys that bullshit line hook and sinker, and now this whole situation has just brought the two of them closer together. But Archie's not dumb. He does think about the situation, and even though he does believe Miss Grundy's story, he decides it's probably best that they stop seeing each other. He goes to Grundy's house in the middle of the night, as he's known to do, and he gives her a goodbye present, which is like a violin thingy. And it's a very sweet moment, I guess, but, they're hugging goodbye, and then bam, the door kicks open. Actually, hold on, I just checked my notes. Archie doesn't go to Grundy's house. They're in the music room at the school after hours. My apologies. But yeah, the door busts open, and who is there? Betty's mom with Betty and Archie's dad, Fred. Because you see, Betty's mom was going through Betty's bedroom because she's a helicopter parent, and she discovers Miss Grundy's gun in Betty's dresser, and she's like, what? Which, to be fair, is good parenting. It's like, how dare you look through your daughter's dresser? But also, you found a gun. Anyway, Betty's mom freaks out, grabs Betty's diary out of its hiding place, which don't even ask me how she knows where that is. Reads through the diary, turns out Betty has been giving detailed notes about the Archie and Grundy situation. So Betty's mom's reading that up like it's Pride and Prejudice, or in this case, Pride and the Predator. Anyway, they bust in there. Betty's mom is like, we're going to take you to the cops, Grundy. Archie is trying to save Grundy. Betty feels terrible because she accidentally got them in this situation, so Betty's trying to defend Archie. And meanwhile, Archie's dad's there, but he's just kind of like, damn, Miss Grundy is hot. Basically, what ends up happening is Miss Grundy is like, I will quit and I will leave town tonight. Just do not get the cops involved. Which is exactly what happens. She does follow her word. She gets in the car and she leaves town. But I want to add something else that happens in that scene. As we see Miss Grundy heading to her car about to drive away and leave town, she's wearing her big sunglasses and she's sipping on her big gulp, and she does there's some hot football players from the high school walking by her car, and she does the whole bringing her sunglasses down, looking at the hot guys move that she did to Archie when they got together in episode 1, which I think proves that, because they don't blatantly say this, but I think that this proves that Grundy is actually a serial predator. Everything she said about her ex-husband is a lie. I think she is just on the run because she has been messing with teenage boys for a long time. And the thing that this shouldn't be such a big surprise, a big deal. It's just the fact that most teen dramas are not subtle. And this was done very subtly. Little things where Archie was about to go to the police. And he was like, are we even, is this relationship even real, Miss Grundy? It's funny that he's talking about his relationship and he still calls her Miss Grundy, which he does every time. But he's like, is this relationship even real? Because I don't know what I'm protecting if it's not. And then her vibe just subtly shifts to be manipulative. And she's like, of course it's real. I don't want us to have to stop doing what we're doing. That's why I don't want the cops involved. But like, it was just so subtle how she manipulated Archie's feelings and tried to keep him from going to the police about something. I mean, it didn't work. He ended up doing it, but still. I'm just glad that this storyline is over now, or at least I think it is. Unlike some other shows that drags the teacher-student relationship for 2 seasons. Wink, wink. You know what show I'm talking about. Okay, enough of that. Let's talk about another major storyline from these episodes, which brings us to Hermione Lodge. That is Veronica's mom. Veronica's mom is seen talking to a Southside Serpent. The Southside Serpents are a biker gang that are like in the south side of Riverdale. They're pretty much just like, it's like all of the criminals in Riverdale are in like one area and they call themselves the Serpents. And they do seem to be like a key player in the show now. So why is Hermione Lodge talking to a Southside Serpent? Well, it turns out that the local drive-in theater has been purchased by an anonymous buyer. And it is being torn down by the anonymous buyer. Why do I keep saying anonymous buyer? It's because I know that the anonymous buyer is actually Hermione and her husband Hiram, aka Veronica's parents. And Hiram hired the Southside Serpents to hang out at the drive-in to reduce the property value, just kind of like trash the place up, make it not feel safe, so that way Hiram could buy the property at a cheaper value than what it was worth. But Hiram is in jail, so Hermione is the one having to handle all of the business operations. And apparently they owe the Serpents some money. It even gets to the point where Hermione, who is now having to work at Pop's chocolate shop as a waitress, the Serpents drop off a box for her when she's by herself after hours, and inside of the box is a snake. It's basically a threat from the Serpents saying, pay us our money. So she calls up her old boyfriend, Fred, who is Archie's dad, to come help her get rid of the snake in a box. It's my snake in a box. It's in a box. And so Fred comes and helps her. He sees the dangerous situation that she is in, and he gives her a job working for him because I guess he just feels like he can protect her better if she's working with him every day. And the reason he feels like he can protect her is because the Southside Serpent that Hermione was talking to is Jughead's dad. This guy. Speaking of Jughead's dad, he's played by actor Skeet Ulrich, who I am a huge fan of. And since we're talking about Jughead's dad, it's important to note that Jughead does not live with his dad. I don't know the whole situation, but essentially Jughead has been living at the drive-in theater where he works for the past whoever knows how long, but now it's being torn down and he doesn't have a place to live. I'm gonna be honest, Jughead has a rough life. Ooh, one last thing about the Southside Serpents. Kevin ends up meeting a Southside Serpent that's about their age and they start making out. So there's like a little romance brewing there. The son of the sheriff with a Southside Serpent. Now, it's time for us to talk about one of the most interesting things from these episodes. What happened between Jason and Polly? And we get a ton of answers about kind of this big mystery that's been dangled in front of us this entire show so far. But we also get some new mysteries that we don't know the answer to yet. In episode 5, we start learning a little bit about the history of Riverdale. Cheryl's parents, the Blossoms, are having an official funeral for their son Jason now that his body has been recovered. And they are inviting everyone on their list of suspects that they think killed their son, including Riverdale's founding families. And Betty starts looking into Jason's life more and meets up with this guy who was on the water polo team with Jason. And he tells her that Jason had started acting weird the past several months. Very weird and secretive, and he had been dating Polly for a few months before he changed. And Betty's like, what do you mean he changed? And he's like, he stopped seeing his friends, he stopped taking his calls, he was selling like everything he could that he owned for cash, and he even heard that Jason was selling drugs. So now Betty's like, what did this dude have going on? And what does my sister Polly have to do with it? So finally, Betty has had enough, and she goes and visits her dad, Well, I say visits. She goes home and her dad's there. And she's like, Mom won't ever tell me what's going on with Polly. Tell me what's going on with Polly. And Betty's dad tells us what happened. Jason and Polly had gotten into some sort of fight. He doesn't know what the fight was about, but he does know that that night Polly tried to hurt herself. And so that is why she got sent away to a group home so that she could be under observation and she wouldn't hurt herself, permanently. So now we're starting to get some of the puzzle pieces, right? And Jughead starts asking some good questions, like why would a rich kid like Jason Blossom, whose family is the wealthiest in Riverdale, need to sell drugs? And Betty's like, well, he's trying to run away from his parents. He needed some money, like his own money. And then Jughead was like, or he wasn't running away from his parents. He's running away from a drug dealer, which is a very interesting point. But I think it kind of defeats the purpose of the original question that was posed. That was posed. The original question that was posed. If he was running away from a drug dealer, the original question still stands of why was he selling drugs if he's wealthy? So it's like, well, okay, why was he selling drugs? To get away from his parents. Well, then he's trying to get away from his parents, not a drug dealer. You know what I mean? But that is not the end of the lore that we have between all of these families, which, might I say, all of the parents in this show suck, except for Archie's dad, Fred. He's a good guy. Anyway, Betty and Jughead break into Jason's bedroom during Jason's funeral. That is where they run into Cheryl and Jason's grandmother, who is just this ancient woman who is creepily in the corner of Jason's bedroom when she's supposed to be out there at the funeral. But she can't actually see that well, and she mistakes Betty to be Polly. And she tells them that Polly and Jason were engaged. This show is getting absolutely bonkers. And since the Jason and Polly storyline keeps coming up and seems to be such an important storyline for this show, I have to imagine that it ties into Jason's death somehow. So we need to be paying close attention to any information about Polly and Jason. So Betty goes straight back to her dad and is like, did you know that Polly and Jason were engaged? And he's like, yeah. And he tells her why their family hates the Blossoms. Turns out the Coopers and the Blossoms are like the Hatfields and McCoys of Riverdale. Cheryl's great-great-grandfather killed Betty's great-great-grandfather. I know, this show has everything. Blood feuds, child predators, music-loving football players. It's like High School Musical if it was a Lifetime movie. Anyway, great-great-grandfather Blossom killed great-great-grandfather Cooper. Apparently, they were business partners in their maple syrup business, but double great-granddaddy Blossom didn't want to share the profits with Triple G Daddy Cooper, and so he killed him over it. So that explains why there's so much beef between those two families. It's not just because of Polly's attempt on her own life due to an argument she had with Jason. There's layers to this shit. By the way, I'm not even sure that we can be confident that that story that Polly tried to hurt herself is even true. Because it's like these families hate each other so much. I imagine they both blame the other family for the situation that caused the rift, right? Like I bet they blame the Blossoms' great-great-grandfather, and then they blame the Cooper's great-great-grandfather. So, Betty's dad can be a little bit of an unreliable narrator because of his feelings of this blood feud. Does that make sense? Okay, that leads us into a pretty big clue that we got in episode 5. During the night of the final drive-in movie, before it gets closed down and tore down, essentially the entire town is at this event. And while they're there, someone breaks into Sheriff Keller's house and steals all of his files and his conspiracy wall that looks very similar to the one behind me. Well, after Betty learns about the blood feud between her family and the Blossoms, her and Jughead realize that her family could be major suspects. And that is when we find out, us, the audience, not anyone else, we find out that Hal, Betty's dad, is in fact the one who broke into the sheriff's house and stole his files. Pretty intense stuff. And I think we're beginning to figure out how this show works. And my only goal is that whatever theory I lock in this section, it does not get brought up and debunked in the next episode. I think that it's very clear that the whole Cooper's and Blossom's blood feud has something to do with Jason's death. Probably. But there's some things that do not quite add up. Because Betty's dad said that the reason that Polly got sent away is because she had a breakdown and tried to hurt herself after a fight with Jason. However, we find out that Jason and Polly were engaged. And meanwhile, Jason had been acting strange, avoiding his friends and dealing drugs. So what happened there? Did Polly find out about that and was like, whoa, I don't know about this? Because why was he even selling drugs in the first place? And then also remember, he was also selling all of his stuff for cash. I think that, like I said with the unreliable narrator thing, I think maybe Betty's dad is lying. I think that Polly might have gotten sent away for a different reason. I think it's a Romeo and Juliet situation. Jason and Polly get engaged. Their parents freak out because of the family feud. Family feud? Steve Harvey.
Name something you like your girlfriend to do to your face.
I want to say sit on it.
Yes!
So their parents forbid them from seeing each other. So Jason's like, okay, bet. Well, I love Polly and we're gonna run away together. And that is why he's trying to get a bunch of cash. They are going to run away, but somehow Polly's parents find out about this. Probably because of Polly's diary, because remember how easily Alice found Betty's diary? This causes the Coopers to freak out and they send Polly away, claiming that she's a danger to herself. But really, they just want her locked away so that she can't run away with Jason Blossom. And then, well, I don't really know what happens next. Something has to happen between Polly getting sent away and then Jason coming up with a plan to fake his own death. But then, why would Jason want to run away without Polly? Unless it does have something to do with a drug dealer. You know, because Jughead made that comment about maybe he's running away from a drug dealer. And the only criminals we've really met in this show are the Southside Serpents. And the only two Southside Serpents we've met is Jughead's dad, this guy, and Joaquin, who is the serpent that Kevin was making out with. This is him. I wrote J-Dog because I didn't know how to spell Joaquin and I didn't want you guys to bully me in the comments section. Anyway, maybe he was dealing drugs with one of them and he owes them money or something like that. Oh, actually, you know what? We have met a different criminal. Well, we haven't met them, but Veronica's dad, Hiram, is also a criminal. And we need to figure out how he plays into all of this because it does really seem like he has had criminal dealings, like this drive-in situation with the serpents and lowering the property value. This was all happening well before his family moved to Riverdale because he was arrested. Maybe Jason got involved with him or something? I don't know. I do think that the Lodges, Veronica, her mom, her dad, I think that the Lodges might be one of those Riverdale founding families that the Blossoms were talking about. I'm going to be honest. I do feel like I'm starting to spiral a little bit because we have so many different loose threads going on. We have Jason and Polly and their families. We have Veronica's mafia boss dad. Jughead's dad is a criminal biker gang member. And also, what does Archie have to do with any of this? He is the main character of the show. Surely he plays some sort of role in the mystery, which leads me to even wonder, is Archie and his dad, are the Andrews a founding family of Riverdale? If so, they're the only poor ones. Is Archie's dad involved? He's the nicest guy ever. And then there's Betty's dad, who is way too obvious because that guy has a burning hate for the Blossoms. Oh, and we saw him stealing the sheriff's files, and so I don't know why they would show us that if he's actually the killer. I think it's more likely that it's a misdirect, and we got to see Betty's dad steal the sheriff's files because we're meant to think, oh, that must mean he's guilty. But really, maybe he's just trying to protect someone like his wife, Betty's mom. But that's probably too obvious as well, so maybe he's trying to protect someone else. May I suggest Polly? I think Polly killed Jason. Now, hear me out. I know that I have already done this before, and I know that I just spent several minutes on a little bit of an unhinged rant about how I don't think Polly is the killer. But hear me out. Why would Betty's dad steal the sheriff's files if he's not involved in some way? It has to be because he is protecting someone. So who is he protecting? I think Betty's mom is too obvious of a pick, and I don't think Betty is involved at all. So that only leaves one person, which is Polly. So why would Polly kill Jason? They were engaged. Well, my whole theory earlier when I was ranting about how I don't think Polly is the killer was based off the notion that I thought that Betty's dad was lying. But what if Betty's dad is telling the truth? What if Polly did try to harm herself? Hear me out. What if the reason she tried to harm herself was because she accidentally got Jason killed? But Chase, that timeline does not add up because Polly got sent away and that was before Jason tried to fake his death and got shot. Well, what if, I'm not saying Polly shot Jason. I'm saying that Polly got Jason killed because we have other elements and plot lines at play here, like the drug dealing. What if Polly, who has been called something of a bit of a wild child by people in the town, what if she was in a really bad situation? What if she had gotten addicted to drugs and owed drug dealers some money? Maybe even Joaquin, the serpent that been making out with Kevin. So she owes them money. She doesn't know how to get it. Jason, maybe he's cut off from his family because of his relationship with Polly, so he's not able to pay them. You know, we saw the serpents threatening Hermione with scare tactics like the snake in the box when she owed them money. Maybe the same thing was happening to Polly. So in an effort to pay off Polly's debts, Jason starts dealing drugs for the serpents, which just gets him into even more trouble. Maybe he almost snitches or something on them. And so now maybe they even threaten to kill Jason or Polly. Polly freaks out, tells her parents about the whole situation. They don't care about Jason at all. They only worry about getting Polly to safety. So they send Polly away to a group home where the serpents can't find her, leaving Jason to take the fall himself. So Jason, in an effort to escape the drug dealers that he owes money to because of Polly's addiction, he tries to fake his death and leave town, but the serpents find him on the morning of July 4th and kidnap him. Now, Betty's dad is trying to hinder the investigation by stealing the sheriff's files because he's worried that somehow the investigation is going to get back to Polly having a drug addiction and dealings with the serpents. You know, these people are all about family image. They don't want that getting out. And I think, guys, I just might think that this theory proves that I am the world's greatest detective. I know that I have already said this once in this video, but I think that I just crushed that theory. I am extremely confident in it. Honestly though, that is a great theory. It ties all of the different storylines together. Well, except for the Archie singing stuff. I don't know what that has to do with anything. Maybe Archie will sing like a love song or something in the finale and everyone's happy again. Okay, that is what I am locking in for who killed Jason Blossom for episodes 4 and 5. Polly accidentally got Jason killed by drug dealers because of an addiction.
Oh my God, what's happening?
He's choking.
This whole car is a crime scene.
Did you kill Jason Blossom?
Guys, we might finally be cooking. That's right, baby. Last section, I locked in my theory that Jason was actually killed by drug dealers because Polly had gotten, owed drug dealers money and he got. What are you guys looking at? What, you don't like the new fit? I just got done watching episodes 6 and 7, and guys, I feel like we might really be onto something. In these episodes, Betty and Jughead find out that Betty's sister, Polly, who we have finally met, she's right here, Polly is at a home for troubled youths. And it kind of sounds like it's like a Catholic school for bad kids or something like that. So Betty and Jughead find the location and they go and visit her. And dude, Polly is pregnant. She is pregnant with Jason Blossom's baby. I'm kind of kicking myself for not seeing that one coming. You know, in hindsight, kind of obvious. We also learned that Polly never tried to hurt herself like her dad said that she did. But Polly actually tells Betty the story of what actually happened. And to be honest, it is not that different than what we have been predicting. But with one major detail that I did not realize. It's the whole thing where the parents were furious that Polly and Jason were together. Next thing you know, Jason's parents, the Blossoms, they force Jason to break up with Polly. But then Polly tells Jason that she's pregnant with his baby. And Jason is like, oh shit, that's awesome. And he's like, hey, let's just run away together. And then that way we don't have to deal with any of our crazy parents. Which leads me to the part that I was either just confused and misunderstood, or it wasn't revealed until just now. I thought that Polly had already been sent away well before Jason faked his death and ended up getting killed. Because all of that happened on July 4th. Well, that is not the case. Polly got sent away that same morning. In fact, that's where Jason was going. Jason was faking his death, and when he got to the other side of Sweetwater River, Cheryl dropped him off. He was supposed to be meeting Polly there at the side of the river. But when Polly went downstairs that morning at her house about to leave and go to meet Jason by the river, her mom was waiting. This lady right here was waiting with a bunch of these big guys and a Catholic woman. So the nun or whoever she is, they throw Polly in the back of a van and they take her away to the home for troubled youths. And dude, you want to know the craziest part about this scene? It's not all of the information we're getting from Polly, it's the information that Polly doesn't know. Polly does not know that Jason is dead, which is weird because Betty's dad had told Betty that Polly knew that Jason was dead. So Betty has to tell her sister Polly, who has been locked up in this Catholic home for troubled youths, that the love of her life, the father of her unborn child, is dead. And not just dead, murdered. But don't you worry, Polly, because I am on the case. Chase is on the case, and I'm going to solve who killed your fiance. We learned some other information from Betty's conversation with Polly. We find out about the getaway car. Polly was supposed to meet Jason that morning on July 4th at the car near the abandoned Highway 40 or something like that. So Betty and Jughead know about this car where they were supposed to meet up, so they go there and they actually find the car that Polly was talking about. They open up the trunk of the car and there's a lot of drugs in there, dude. And not just drugs, they also see Jason's things, including his Letterman jacket with his name on it. Oh, this old thing? No, I just had this laying around, But that brings up a lot of questions that need answers, right? Like why, when Jason is trying to get away with his fiance and unborn child, is there a trunk full of drugs? Is it in case anyone gets a little hungry on the way, needs a snack? Anyway, Betty and Jughead find this car. They take some pictures because they are good detectives. And we see from a POV kind of shot, someone is watching Betty and Jughead at this getaway car. And when our two sleuths, Betty and Jughead, run off to go tell the sheriff about what they find, the person that is watching them in the woods catches the car on fire, burning up all of the evidence. And to make matters worse, at that exact time, Polly has jumping out of her second-story bedroom window at the troubled home for youths, or home for troubled youths. And this is a problem because the Blossoms find out about this and now they suspect that Polly was the one who burnt up all the evidence in the getaway car, because they're thinking that she's trying to get rid of any evidence that would prove that Polly is the one who killed Jason. And I know that I have also accused Polly of killing Jason Blossom several times. But I want to make it very clear that I am 110% sure at this point in time that Polly did not kill Jason. I think. Okay, maybe not 110%. So now the whole town is searching for Polly. She is gone missing. The Coopers, along with, Betty and Jughead and Archie and a whole bunch of their friends, the whole gang, they're in the woods looking for Polly. But they're not the only people looking for Polly. The Blossoms are also looking for Polly, and they're using bloodhounds. This show is so wild, dude, but it's really great. No one is able to find Polly except for Betty. She finds Polly in the attic of their house, which is, funny. Betty refuses to tell anyone, including her parents, that she knows where Polly is. And actually, this leads to a press conference that Betty's parents hold about Polly. Alice is at the press conference and she's all like, "You may have heard some rumors about our daughter Polly today, but they are not true. Polly would never kill Jason Blossom because she is pregnant with his baby." And everyone loses their minds, dude. They're like, oh shit! The two families that famously hate each other are becoming one. I mean, it must have felt like an episode of Jerry Springer in that town that day. Everyone just running around like, yo, hey, you know that family that made their fortune from maple syrup? You know how their teenage son got shot in the head? Well, before he got shot in the head, turns out he got the evil journalists from the newspaper, their teenage daughter pregnant. And then someone else is like, well, hey, at least he didn't die a virgin. Anyway, once the Blossoms find out this shocking news that Polly is having Jason's baby, their whole attitude changes drastically. They're just trying to figure out how they can get their hands on that baby. Meanwhile, the Coopers, they're trying to force Polly to give the baby up for adoption. So Polly's just not safe anywhere. And so what Betty and Veronica decide is Polly is going to go live with Veronica and her mom. And that's about as far as we've gotten with that storyline, but I can only imagine it gets crazier. What this means, though, is that my theory that I locked in the last section where I said that Jason was killed by drug dealers due to Polly's addiction. I still think we're onto something, but I think we need to make some serious changes. I do not think that Polly is involved with drugs or any of the drug dealing, but I do think that the drug dealing with Jason is still a part of why he died. And I think that if we go back to when, Betty had that conversation with the kid who was on the water polo team, and that kid said that Jason had started dealing drugs, I think that might be a little bit more likely now, where he just got into a bad situation with some drug dealers. And I'm thinking potentially that his situation with Polly had nothing to do with his death. Because at one point, Betty even confronts her parents, and I mean, it's a pretty intense scene. She blatantly asks her dad if he is the one who killed Jason Blossom. And Betty's mom, who again is just the meanest lady, she starts laughing. And she goes, him? You think he has the stomach to do something like that? I wish that he killed Jason Blossom. I wish I had killed Jason Blossom. Which, at this point, I don't think I understand. Because, this whole time we've been like, what did Jason do to Polly? It must have been pretty bad. Well, I think what he did was get her pregnant. So, I don't understand. I mean, I understand, they'd be upset that their teenage daughter is pregnant, but why do you hate this kid? So I guess it is like a Romeo and Juliet situation, What did Jason do wrong, really, other than love Polly? Oh, no. If this is Romeo and Juliet, though, they both die at the end, so Polly needs to watch out. Basically, what I am trying to say is, I do not think that Jason and Polly's relationship is the storyline that we need to be focusing on in trying to solve Jason's death. I think we need to be looking at other things that are going on in the show. And no, I do not mean Archie singing. Dude, I really like this show. I really like it. But it is insanely annoying how people are going through like life-altering events week in and week out, and meanwhile Archie's just like, I want to write songs. At one point in these two episodes, I can't remember which one, Archie goes to Betty and like apologizes for not being around. He's like, I'm sorry I haven't been there for you. I've just been really busy writing songs with the piano player from Josie and the Pussycats. So if we need to look at other storylines from the show to find the killer. What's even going on other than High School Musical and Romeo and Juliet? Well, Veronica's parents are still like mafia bosses. Her dad is still in prison and her mom is currently working with Archie's dad, Fred. In fact, Hermione and Fred have even started like dating. Veronica catches the two of them kissing at one point, and it is like a huge deal. Then Hermione forges her daughter's signature on like some important papers. It's the paperwork that would actually sign over the construction job of, how she bought, her and her husband bought the land that the drive-in was on. Well, she signed some papers saying that Archie's dad's construction company would actually be the one doing the construction. And so Veronica and her mom have a big fight about this, mostly because she forged her signature. And one of the things I love the most about this show is how crazy some of the situations actually are. Like at the point where Hermione is trying to like get Veronica to sign the papers before she just ends up forging them anyway, Veronica is looking at her mom and she's like, you know what, fine. If I sign this paper, will you stop cheating on dad with Fred Andrews? And her mom's like, no? Are you kidding me? Have you seen that guy? That's fucking Luke Perry, dude. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but that is pretty much how the conversation went. This show rules, dog. So we got that going on. We learn more about Jughead and his dad, FP, who is right here. Oh, but before we start talking about Jughead and his dad, we should talk about Jughead and his romance with Betty. Jughead and Betty have pretty much started dating, which is cool. And then we find out where Jughead has been living ever since the drive-in got tore down. Jughead has actually been living in a closet under the stairs at the school. And Archie finds out about that and he's like really upset. He's like, well, Jughead, why would you keep this from me? Come live with me and my dad. And we find out that the reason that Jughead even like left home in the first place is because his dad had fallen off the wagon and Jughead's mom and little sister moved away. Jughead decided to stick around, but he didn't want to keep living with his dad, so that's when he left to go live in the drive-in. Jughead's dad, FP, becomes a pretty major character in episode 7. He wants to do better for his son and his family, so he accepts a job working for Archie's dad again. I say again because we find out that Archie's dad and Jughead's dad, FP, were actually childhood best friends that grew up together, a lot like Archie and Jughead did. And they actually started the construction company together. But after Fred had to keep bailing FP out of jail, he decided it was a bad look for the company and it would end up being detrimental to Fred and his family. So he bought FP out of the business and was just kind of done with him. So what we know about FP is he has always kind of struggled with the law and he is a part of the South Side Serpents. He also really struggles with alcohol, which, side note, the actor who plays FP, Skeet, he does a killer job playing this role. Like, I mean, he's really putting on a masterclass. Every scene that FP is in, like, truly makes you feel uneasy as a viewer. Like, if you've ever been around alcoholics, like, they have that tenseness to any situation where they could just kind of snap at any moment. And Cole Sprouse, who plays Jughead, is doing a killer job acting opposite of him because he's playing it like he knows his dad will snap at any moment. And it just really adds just a ton of tension to any scene that the two of those are in together. Anyway, Jughead actually gets called down to the police station for questioning because when the sheriff ran prints on the burnt down car, they found Betty and Jughead's fingerprints on the car, obviously, which they realized, but they also ran the prints anyway, and they found out that Jughead has some priors. Turns out in 4th grade, Jughead was playing with some matches and he got sent to juvie because they thought he was trying to burn down the elementary school. And the sheriff's just like, Jughead, you're a kid from the wrong side of the tracks. Your dad's an alcoholic, he's a deadbeat. You get bullied by all the kids at school, especially the football team, and Jason was the captain of the football team. So he's essentially insinuating, also the sheriff doesn't talk like that, but he's insinuating that Jughead could be the killer just because he's this angsty kid who gets bullied. And Jughead is freaking out because even though he knows that they can't get any proof that he did it because he didn't do it, he's really afraid that since the sheriff is under so much pressure to solve this murder, that he might end up being a scapegoat. He even mentions those kids that just because they listen to heavy metal music I think this was like during the Satanic Panic. They ended up getting blamed for some deaths or something like that. He brings up that situation, and it's a good parallel. But before Jughead can go down with the sickness, Archie and his dad come and save the day. Archie's dad, Fred, actually lies to the sheriff and says that Jughead was like hanging drywall for him in his construction company at that exact time of Jason Blossom's murder. And he even makes some like fake time cards to prove it. So now Jughead is living with Archie and his dad. And we get this like really emotional scene between Jughead and his dad, FP, where FP is like, I'm gonna get it together. I'm going to get our family back together. FP is a character that we did not meet right away. We met him later in the season, but now he is a major player in the game. Even more so at the end of episode 7 when we see that FP has Jason's Letterman jacket, the one that was in the car that got burnt down, in his closet, which means that FP is the person who burnt up the car. Now, since the show like blatantly showed us this evidence, I think what that means is that FP is not the killer, but he's up to something. If FP is the one who burnt up the car and destroyed all the evidence, why would he need to be hiding the evidence if he wasn't involved in some way? I imagine it has to do with the drugs that were in the car. You know, if Jason Blossom was working with drug dealers, I assume that the drug dealers had to be the Southside Serpents. I think the FP might be a major red herring. Like, he's involved with the murder case because he was the drug dealer that Jason was working with, and Jason might have even owed him a lot of money. So if that information ever came out, then FP would obviously be suspect number 1. And I mean, they could probably just convict him out of that information alone, you know, based on that and his priors. So I'm thinking FP is trying to cover his tracks and like get rid of any evidence that he had any dealings whatsoever with Jason Blossom. But what this also means for our theories and our investigation is if the drug dealing has to do with FP and FP isn't the killer, then that means that Jason's death was not involved with the drug dealing. Jason being involved with Polly, that was a red herring to distract us from the real reason that Jason was killed. Jason being involved with drug dealers, that is another red herring distracting us from the real reason that Jason was killed. So what do we know that could have anything to do with Jason Blossom being murdered? If he wasn't killed because of his family blood feud and he wasn't killed because of his drug dealing situation, then what is it? The only other major storylines that we have going on in this show is Archie and his singing, and Veronica's criminal father, Hiram. We do not know much about Hiram, and we have yet to meet Hiram, but we do know that he has had criminal dealings in Riverdale. He hired the Southside Serpents to loiter and mess with the property value of the drive-in so that way he could buy the property at a cheaper price. And that's just kind of something interesting to think about is like, if this guy who's super rich, and him and his wife and his daughter, they're like celebrities. They live in New York City. They have this multi-million-dollar penthouse. He gets arrested and goes to jail. But before that, he was doing these deals in Riverdale for property. What does he want with Riverdale when he's living the life of luxury up north or down south? I don't know where Riverdale is set. So it's like, okay, why is this wealthy guy doing business in Riverdale? And then, hey, who's the other super rich guy doing business in Riverdale? That's right. Clifford Blossom, the head of the maple syrup empire. So here is my theory. Veronica's dad, Hiram, he's trying to buy up a bunch of property and real estate in Riverdale. Cheryl's dad, Clifford, is the richest and like most powerful man in Riverdale. Maybe the two of them were doing business together, maybe even shady business, criminal business. We already got the kind of parallel or parable between the maple syrup empire's creation. Remember, great-great-grandfather Blossom was starting the company with great-great-grandfather Cooper, but they didn't want to share the profits, so great-great-grandfather Blossom killed great-great-grandfather Cooper. So they didn't have to share the profits. And we got another kind of similar situation between Fred, Archie's dad, and FP, Jughead's dad. They started a construction company together. Something happened, and Fred kicked him out of the company. He did not kill FP. That is important to note. So maybe that is happening again. Maybe the two of these, Hiram and Clifford, were doing business together and something goes wrong. Two rich businessmen working together, something happens that creates a rift between them. They're not the best people. Anything could have happened, but maybe Cheryl's dad, Clifford, actually screws Hiram over, potentially, and this is my theory, being the reason that Hiram got sent to jail. Hiram, obviously wanting to retaliate after being put in jail by the dude he was working with, hires someone to kill Jason Blossom. And we've already seen criminals in Riverdale do Hiram's dirty work before. Remember, Hiram hired the Serpents to lower the property value of the drive-in. So, who do I think Hiram hired to kill Jason Blossom? I'm glad you asked. J-Dog, Joaquin. That is the Southside Serpent that we saw making out with Kevin on the final night of the drive-in. And, we've only ever seen him one time, but the show really made sure that we learned his name. And it seemed like they were going to really push him as a love interest for Kevin, but then he hasn't showed up anymore. So why would the show make such a big deal to introduce this character to us and then not see him for a while? Maybe it's because he's going to be a part of the big reveal in the last episode. And this would explain why I keep falling for all of these red herrings and throwing out these theories that just get shut down immediately. It's because the person who actually killed Jason Blossom is someone who we have never seen. Hiram Lodge. We have never seen Hermione's husband. We have never seen Veronica's dad, but we hear about him constantly, all the time, talking about Hiram, almost as much as listening about Archie singing, because that is the rule when it comes to solving a lot of whodunits. You have to introduce whodunit very early. Otherwise, the audience is going to feel cheated when it comes to the reveal, and it's someone we just met right at the end. So, a cool, clever way of getting around that rule is maybe introducing us to a character, having us hear a lot about a character, but never actually meeting the character. Because that's the thing, it's not going to be any of the four main characters. It's not going to be Archie, or Betty, or Jughead, or Veronica, but all of the side characters are up for grabs. But with each and every episode, more and more suspects are being eliminated, which has been leaving me extremely confused. But with the Hiram theory, that's someone that we didn't necessarily meet in episode 1, but we did hear about him, and he became a very big deal because him being in jail was the whole reason that Hermione and Veronica moved there. He's a major talking point in the entire first episode. It's extremely clever because we think of him as a supporting character on this show, and we don't know what he looks like. And that, my friends, is why I am the greatest detective in the world. For episodes 6 and 7 of Riverdale, I am locking in Hiram Lodge as who I think killed Jason Blossom. And I guess I'm also locking in Joaquin, the Southside Serpent, because he's the one that actually pulled the trigger. Next episode, baby.
The Blossoms and the Coopers, they've been the Hatfields and McCoys long before Polly was pregnant.
Why is your own daughter not living with you?
How dare you?
This show is really kicking off and we have a lot to talk about. Go Bulldogs! I just watched episodes 8 and 9. And if I'm being completely honest, I probably should have done my own whole section just for episode 8 because we learn so much in that episode, starting with Polly telling us that Jason was doing a one-time deal with the Southside Serpents, running drugs. He was trying to make some money so that way they could run away together. These drugs are the same drugs that we found in the back of the getaway car, the car that Betty and Jughead discovered and Jughead's dad FP burnt down. Also, Polly drops a little bit of information that doesn't seem too important, but I think could actually be the most important clue we've gotten in the entire show so far. Polly mentions that the engagement ring that Jason had given to her, when he proposed, it was given to him by his grandmother, the creepy old lady that Jughead and Betty ran into in Jason's bedroom during Jason's funeral. We already knew that part, but the engagement ring That family heirloom engagement ring that Jason gave to Polly when he proposed, he actually had it in his possession when he died. Which means, I'm pretty sure that whoever killed Jason Blossom has that ring. Because, like, let's look at Jason's things, right? Jason's Letterman jacket, FP has that. But it makes sense for him to have that because we know that the varsity jacket was left in the getaway car that FP burnt down because of the evidence. But it really seems like Jason had the engagement ring on his person on that morning of July 4th, which means that whoever killed Jason has to have the ring, right? Because where else would the ring have gone? You know what I mean? Like, the simplest answer is, well, we know Jason's body washed up in the river. So maybe the ring just got lost, came out of his pocket, ended up at the bottom of the river. But we know that Jason was tortured for about a week before he was eventually shot. So I imagine if you're torturing someone for a week, you're gonna check their pockets at some point. Now, maybe Jason just swallowed the ring or something when he was first getting kidnapped. But then I think that would have shown up on the autopsy report. But that's getting really complicated. I think the simplest answer, other than it got lost in the river, is whoever tortured and killed him took the ring from him. Now, there's only two reasons that you would want to take that family heirloom ring. The most likely one is that it's super expensive and you could probably sell it for a ton of money. So if the person who killed Jason is a criminal or a drug dealer, then it's very likely that we might end up seeing them try to sell that ring, and that's what gets them caught. That's why this clue is so important. I think that the ring is going to be what leads us to discover who killed Jason Blossom. Maybe we even get a scene where the person who killed Jason ends up using the family heirloom as a way to try to extort the Blossoms for money. It was like, hey, if you want your heirloom back, you have to give me $5 million. And then the other reason that you would take the ring is because it is a family heirloom. The Blossoms have a ton of enemies in this town and out of this town. Remember Veronica's dad, Hiram, who's in jail. Perhaps the person who killed Jason took that family heirloom to spite the Blossoms. I do have a few theories of who that could be. I'll tell you a quick one that I don't think is probably the most likely, but it's still a good theory. What if, because we know that the Coopers and the Blossoms have such that blood feud between their two families, what if that engagement ring, what if that ring actually originally belonged to the Coopers family? And when the Blossoms' great-great-grandfather killed, maybe he stole that ring from him. And so now they wanted, maybe Hal wanted that ring back. I'm just playing around. I'm just cooking, just breaking a couple eggs, trying to make an omelet. Okay, let's talk about what actually went down in these episodes. We find out that Archie's dad, Fred, his whole construction project is going up in flames, not literally. Clifford Blossom actually bought out Fred's whole construction crew. He just gave them a bunch of money that they couldn't turn down and was basically like, hey, you work for me now, you can't work for Fred. Now, Fred is pissed because this project was what is going to save his company. Without this construction crew to work on this construction site, his company is going to go under, which leads us to a big question. Why would Clifford Blossom be trying to sabotage the construction at the drive-in? Is he trying to sabotage Fred? Or is he trying to sabotage the lodges, who are the secret buyers of that property? Well, don't worry, because we get the answer to that question pretty quickly. Hermione tells Veronica that the Blossoms are making a play for that land that they bought. And the Blossoms are trying to stop the construction. Now, this is getting pretty crazy, right? Because do you remember when I was talking earlier about how I think maybe the reason Jason died is because of a feud going on between a business relationship with Clifford and Hiram Lodge. And now we find out that both of these families are trying to get the same property of land. So it's just Hiram Lodge, the criminal who's in jail, he's from the big city, versus Clifford, the big red bitch. Looks like I was kind of onto something, huh? And that's not even all of it. Because then Archie and Jughead and a few other friends like Kevin, they show up to Fred's construction site and they've got on construction hats and they're like, hey, we're here to work, big dog. And it's like, yes, they saved the day. They're going to work the construction site with Fred, and that works out because Fred's construction crew got taken away. But then some dudes show up and start destroying construction equipment at night, and Moose, this guy, he was there helping. He was one of the friends helping out Archie's dad. He sees them and he's like, hey, what are y'all doing? And so they beat him up with crowbars. And then they tell Moose, they're like, hey, you tell Fred, if he keeps building on this land, this is gonna keep happening. So Fred assumes that the person who hired these thugs to beat up a teenager and destroy his construction equipment was hired by Clifford, who, you know, already sabotaged Fred once by buying up all the construction crew. But then Hermione finds out that it was actually her husband, Hiram, who sent those guys to sabotage everything, because he found out that Hermione was, dating Fred. So now Fred, who's like the nicest guy in the world, is having to deal with his new girlfriend's super rich criminal husband and that turf war that he's got going on with the other rich guy in town. Which we even get a quote in episode 8 where someone says a war between Hiram and Clifford. Oh, and then get this. Remember when I was like, hey, maybe Clifford is the reason that Hiram went to jail? Nailed it. Guys, that wig, I'm dying. I am dying. I'm sorry if this breaks the illusion or ruins the fun of the video, but that wig, I just can't do it. I'll try again. Anyway, Archie overhears Clifford and his wife talking, and Clifford's wife is like, hey, maybe you should have put Hermione in jail instead of Hiram. And Archie's like, oh. Now, we still have a few episodes left, and I imagine we'll get some pretty major twists and turns, but it looks like our theory is on track. Remember, my theory was that Hiram Lodge hired Joaquin, the Southside Serpent, to kill Jason Blossom due to whatever business dealings or disagreements or feud he has going on with Clifford Blossom. And I think that theory still tracks, like I said. However, there are some more layers to this, because we find out that FP, Jughead's dad, is not just a Southside Serpent. It appears that he is like the leader of the Southside Serpents. And so Jughead and Betty actually confront FP and they're like, was Jason dealing drugs? Like running drugs for you? And FP was like, hey, it was a one-time deal. Jason came looking for money and I figured, hey, no one's gonna suspect the son of Clifford Blossom of running drugs. And then in this scene, Jughead asks his dad if he had something to do with Jason Blossom's death. And FP looks just like really hurt that his own son would ask if he killed a kid. And because he genuinely looked hurt that his son would insinuate that, I think that means that FP did not kill Jason, but he's definitely involved. Because then we get a scene with FP and Joaquin, and FP gives Joaquin a bag that has Jason's Letterman jacket in it. And FP is like, hey, here's insurance in case the cops come knocking. And then FP asks Joaquin like, hey, how's the Kevin thing going? We find out that Joaquin is only dating Kevin because he's trying to get like an inside info on what the sheriff has, what he's thinking about the investigation. So that's pretty scummy, but it also does seem like Joaquin feels really guilty about doing this to Kevin, and it seems like he really does have feelings for Kevin. And he even voices his concerns a little bit to FP about like, I don't really want to be doing this to Kevin. And FP is like, hey, we all got to play our part. Even me. And he looks really sad when he says that last part, and I'm not sure what it means, but I think it definitely means that those two are more involved in Jason's death than we had originally thought. I mean, maybe Hiram hired both of them to kill Jason, not just Joaquin like I had thought. I don't know, but I do know that I am getting ahead of myself just a little bit, because Clifford Blossom and the Blossom family has more than one feud than just Hiram Lodge. They have a blood feud with the Coopers, which has somehow escalated even farther. We find out that Hal actually tried to make Polly an abortion appointment and didn't tell anyone, not even his wife. So when Polly tells her mom about this and Betty, Alice freaks out at her husband. The reason that she's so upset is because Hal had done the same thing to her when she first got pregnant with Polly back in the day. So those two are fighting about that whole situation. Alice even like punches her husband in the throat at one point, and she's like, "Our daughter is coming home where she belongs." And Hal is like, "No, she isn't. I will not have any baby with Blossom blood being raised in my house." So Alice kicks him out of the house, and she tells him to get out before she does something that she regrets. And she says, and I quote, "I think you know what I'm capable of by now." What the fuck does that mean? Does that mean that she killed Jason? But sadly, even though she kicked out her husband because she wanted Polly to come home, Polly does not come home. Polly decides to go and live with the Blossoms. This, of course, devastates Betty and her mom. And it's like, why would she do that? But don't worry, because we find out why she would do that. Polly thinks that the Blossoms had something to do with Jason's death. And so she's going to live with them so that she can get close to them and find out what they know. And I guess she thinks this, like she mentioned something about them threatening him before, I think. So maybe that's why she has that thought. Dude, I feel like I've been talking forever in this part, and I am nowhere near done breaking down these 2 episodes. But Polly's theory that the Blossoms had something to do with Jason's death is pretty interesting, because in episode 9, it's essentially the Blossom show. We see all kinds of stuff about their family, you know, behind the scenes. We learn a lot more about their maple syrup business. That is the business that, you know, that they started in Riverdale and kind of is what founded Riverdale as a town. And it's the business that makes them the giant, super wealthy family that they are. And a major theme in this episode is that now that Jason is gone, who is going to take over the family business? Because it obviously can't be Cheryl. That is a pretty much direct quote from episode 9 within like the first minute of the episode. It obviously can't be Cheryl. And that's important to remember because we're going to be bringing that up again. It is time for the annual tree tapping ceremony for the Blossoms Maple Syrup Company. The Blossoms Board of Trustees has made the trip to Riverdale for this annual ceremony that's like super business oriented, and it kicks off the maple syrup season. And this will be the first ceremony that does not have Jason doing the tree tapping. So Cheryl asks Archie if he would escort her to the ceremony and be there for her, since she is going to be doing it for the first time. Well, you know, the first time alone, without Jason. Archie says yes, of course, and while he's there, this is where we find out that the Board of Trustees believe that Clifford, the big red bitch, isn't capable of running the company anymore. And apparently Jason's death was just this huge PR disaster. Plus, who will run the company now that he's gone? And they made it very clear, all of the Board of Trustees, that they do not like Cheryl. Now, that is the second time that it has been brought up that Cheryl is not fit to run the family business. Next thing you know, Clifford Blossom keeps inviting Archie to come be Cheryl's escort at all of these events while the Board of Trustees are in town. And this causes a rift between Archie and his girlfriend, Valerie. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chase, why haven't you said anything about Archie dating Valerie? It's because I didn't know. Like in episode 9, it comes up and I'm like, wait, Archie was dating Valerie? Since when? Anyway, Clifford is essentially trying to bribe Archie into marrying his daughter. He's like, here, I'll stop sabotaging your dad's construction company. Here, have a brand new guitar. Here, I'll get you in on a very interesting music internship this summer. And he tells Archie that the reason that he wants Archie in the family is because Cheryl can't run the company, but if she had someone like Archie with her, then she could run the company. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I have no idea what makes Archie fit to run this fucking company. I think it's just because he has red hair. Like, the whole family, redheaded. The whole Board of Trustees, redheaded. I mean, I am pretty sure that the whole Board of Trustees is also family members. Like, I think they're all Blossoms, but still redheaded. Archie, of course, declines the marriage offer and decides he just needs to get out of there, which probably the best move for both parties, because even though Archie has red hair, don't think he's qualified to run a billion-dollar company. So that means that we have another feud going on with the Blossoms, and that is the feud between the Blossoms and the Board of Trustees. They're trying to take the company away from Clifford. So, there's a pretty solid theory somewhere in there that the Board of Trustees hired the Serpents to kill Jason in a power play effort to take the company. The Blossoms have enemies on all sides. So who killed their son? Which takes us back to Polly's theory that the Blossoms may have had something to do with it themselves. And I do not think that that's the case, because Jason's death has caused so many problems for them. The biggest one being potentially losing the business that makes them gazillionaires. It really seems like that family is scrambling to figure out what to do with the family business now that Jason is not there. So I don't think it would have been smart to kill him. Because even if like the family or the Board of Trustees or whatever were just like upset that Jason was running away, I don't know if the answer is to kill him. Just like let him run away. Either way, he's not going to be there to run the company. Plus, Polly pretty much brings up that theory in one of these episodes. So that's one of those situations where it's like, if the show brings up the theory, you can kind of toss that out as being the answer. So that would make the Blossoms just another red herring. Red herring? Red hair. But that does bring up another issue. A lot of holes are being poked here, folks. Jughead brings up the theory that Hiram hired someone to kill Jason because he knew that Clifford put him in jail. So that kind of puts a wrench in my whole genius theory that I've been preaching about. So if we throw out that theory, I don't even know where it leaves us. I've tried to solve several TV shows and movies at this point for this channel, and I've got to say, this is by far the hardest one. Like, it's a really well done mystery. We have a blood feud between families. Polly's having twins, by the way, so that makes things interesting. We have the whole Clifford being the reason that Hiram was put in jail thing. We have FP and Joaquin being involved in some capacity. And then we have Archie, who wants to be a singer, and that's got to have something to do with it, right? Right, guys? That has to have something to do with it, right? Otherwise, why would Archie bring up his goddamn music every other sentence? Unless it has something to do with it, right? I'm joking, but it does need to involve Archie in some capacity, I would imagine. It's based on Archie comics. So I spent some time trying to figure out how all of these different plot lines could possibly come together into one clean solution. And you know what? I think I nailed it. Triplets. I think that in the next few episodes, we are going to find out that Polly is not just having twins, but Polly is having triplets. Because Polly having twins is obviously a parallel to Cheryl and Jason being twins. But if Polly is not having twins, Polly is having triplets, then what does that parallel lead to? Maybe it's a parallel to Cheryl and Jason being triplets. It has been established in this show that when a child is at risk of embarrassing their family, they get sent away. In fact, after Cheryl puts on a whole dramatic show at Jason's funeral, her mom tells her that if it wasn't for the fact that no one would have her, she would be sent off to a boarding school right away. Pretty weird to just have that in your back pocket, right? Even the Coopers. Their daughter is in some sort of romance with a family they hate. Let's send her away so that she can't be an embarrassment who's pregnant with the Blossoms' baby. My theory is that the Blossoms had a third sibling, a triplet. And maybe that triplet was a problem very early on, and I mean almost immediately. So early that no one in the town, no one would ever know that they even had triplets. My theory, because of how much they love their red hair, maybe that third baby did not have red hair. The Blossoms having a baby without red hair? Impossible. Maybe the baby even had blonde hair, like the Coopers. We couldn't have that. They send the baby away to be raised by someone else. The baby grows up resentful for being an orphan And then the baby finds out where they came from. He finds out about his real family, the Blossoms, who they are, what they are. He gets bitter. He moves to Riverdale. No one knows his true identity. He gets close to the families of Riverdale, maybe even the founding families of Riverdale. Maybe he's even on the football team where he meets Jason. He gets close to Jason. He learns everything that's going on in Jason's life with his family, with Polly. He sees this as his opportunity. The golden boy of the Blossoms, the heir to the maple syrup throne, is trying to run away with his pregnant fiancée. This is his chance. But he can't be certain that if Jason just runs away, that he won't ever come back. No. He needs to get rid of Jason permanently. He kills Jason, throwing the future of the Blossom Empire in disarray. Cheryl can't run the family business. Are you crazy? And now the forgotten triplet is just stirring up all of this drama in Riverdale, making things worse for the Blossoms on every side. Stirring up the feud with Hiram, stirring up the feud with the Coopers, trying to make things so chaotic, so pressuring for Clifford Blossom that he doesn't know what to do and he panics. What is he going to do? His daughter can't run the company. They're trying to take the company away from me. Everyone's coming for me. I don't know what to do. Oh, wait. I have another son. The son that was sent away as a baby. That's right. A long-lost triplet has done all of this as a ploy to get back in the Blossom family and get handed the keys to the kingdom. But this long-lost triplet, I mean, this isn't someone that we've never seen or heard of. That wouldn't work. This has to be someone that we see all the time, maybe subtly doing things that we don't see as stirring up drama. Oh, but they're a part of it. Moose. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hey, Moose doesn't have blonde hair. Well, that was just something I threw out there. He doesn't have to have blonde hair, but maybe he dyes his hair or something. We see Moose a lot, which is really interesting because he really has no reason to be around. And, he hooks up with Kevin sometimes, who is the son of the sheriff. Maybe the reason he hooks up with Kevin sometimes is the same reason that Joaquin has been hooking up with Kevin, to get inside information. And don't forget, Moose was there when Jason's body was found. Moose and Kevin were headed to the woods to hook up when they stumbled upon Jason's body. Maybe Moose, obviously knowing where him and Kevin always go to hook up, placed Jason's body right there so that way he and Kevin would stumble upon it. Because he needed to make sure that Jason's body was found, and who better to find it than the sheriff's son? And that would immediately take away any suspicion of him being one of the ones that find the body, because he's there with the sheriff's son. And the sheriff knows what him and Kevin were doing there. Moose is on the football team, which means that he could have gotten close with Jason. He's always around Archie and Jughead and them. Remember, he showed up to help Fred with his construction crew problem. He could be hanging out, learning everything that he needs to know from these different kids who just constantly talk out loud at school about the crazy scandals that they're going through. This could be a pretty out there reveal, very wild thing that this show could twist. Now, is this a perfect theory? No, we're missing some major elements. We're missing some major points, but this is a show about preserving a family's image, preserving a legacy at the expense of some of the family members themselves. We see it with the Blossoms. We see it with the Coopers. We even see it with FP, who is trying to preserve what is left of his pride at the expense of his family. We see it with the Lodges, business and status and money taking precedent over family members. So is it so wild to think that the answer could be tying in with that theme? A mystery family member who was thrown away because they might embarrass the family name? And the last thing is that this theory actually ties in with Archie. Is it because Moose and Archie do music together? No, it's not. But he is friends with Archie, so that makes Archie a part of it. I'm not gonna lie, guys. This is one of my more absurd theories. This is really out there, but I think I'm cooking. So that is what I'm going to lock in for episodes 8 and 9 of Riverdale. Who do I think killed Jason Blossom? The long-lost triplet. Moose. Because that would also explain why his name is Moose. Because it's like, why would you, like, that's obviously an alias, right?
You're getting a birthday party whether you want one or not.
And the plot thickens.
Mom?
I just watched episodes 10 and 11. And while we do get some pretty big bombshell reveals in these 2 episodes, not a ton happens related to the mystery. These were very teen drama heavy episodes. But the mystery stuff that we do get, oh boy. Well, let's just dive into it. We find out that the Blossoms have been paying a hefty amount every single month to the Lodge family for the past 75 years. And those monthly payments stopped the day that Hiram Lodge went to jail, which we know Clifford Blossom was behind. And Veronica is aware of that fact. So Veronica's theory is that Clifford Blossom was trying to get out of continuing to pay the lodges this monthly fee. Hiram, her dad, was not having it, and so Clifford had her dad arrested, or, snitched on him about his crimes and got him arrested. And Veronica brings up this theory to her mom and their attorney. They're like, you're probably right, but if everyone finds out that Clifford Blossom is the reason that your dad went to jail, everyone's gonna think your dad killed Jason Blossom. And Veronica is like, oh. And then she's like, I think my dad killed Jason Blossom. So Veronica is very guilt-ridden and worried that her dad could have killed Jason Blossom, and she's taking out all of her emotions on Cheryl, who, isn't the nicest person, but your dad may have killed her brother. Like at one point, Veronica is fed up with Cheryl and just straight up accuses Cheryl of killing her own brother because her and her brother had a twincest relationship. Which, hey, I gotta give it to Veronica. Pretty good theory. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I don't think it's very likely, especially now that that theory was just, yelled out at a teen house party in front of everyone. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the major info we get in episode 10. But before we move on to the absolute crazy stuff that we learn in episode 11, let's just do like a quick breakdown of some other stuff that we learn in episode 10. So the whole episode is about how Betty has this darkness inside of her. And we get a line from Betty's mom saying that there's some things inside of her that she has a hard time controlling. Combine that with the fact that we learn that Betty's mom, Alice, used to be a Southside Serpent, and we're starting to see a bit of a theme here. Seems like it's implying that all of the Cooper women have some sort of deep darkness that comes out sometimes. This could be a hint that Alice had something to do with Jason's death. I don't really think so. Or it could be a hint that if we've seen Betty and Betty's mom Alice both do things that aren't super ethical due to that darkness inside of them, maybe it's implying that Polly also has that darkness inside of her. Maybe she did kill Jason after all, I don't think so, but you never know. This is also the episode of Riverdale that I've seen online a ton where Jughead is like, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo. Have you ever seen me without this hat? And honestly, seeing it in context for the first time, it is not as cringy as everyone makes it out to be. Archie and Veronica ended up kissing. Seems like they might end up being a couple very soon. Veronica and Betty think that Hiram, Veronica's dad, hired FP to kill Jason Blossom. So that is pretty intense. Archie's mom shows up. Archie's mom is played by the actress Molly Ringwald. Let's move on to episode 11, which gets absolutely insane because remember earlier in this video when I said if we can figure out who has Jason's ring, that they're the killer? Well, we found out who has Jason's ring. Polly is sneaking around the Blossoms' mansion because that's where she's been living. And she keeps trying to get into Cheryl's parents' bedroom, but that's like strictly off limits. At one point, Polly almost gets into the room and she's kind of watching from the door and she sees that like Clifford Blossom just has like 50 red wigs. And then Clifford is actually in there and we see him without his wig on and he has just gray hair, which honestly, really great for the last theory that I locked in. And also very hilarious because his wigs, I didn't realize he was wearing a wig. And then the second you notice that, like, the second you find out that he's been wearing a wig this whole time, it looks like this wig. It is not a good wig. But my theory, like, remember my theory was about, like, how the secret triplet didn't have red hair, so they sent it away. That was kind of a stretch, right? Well, I thought it was kind of silly for a family to care so much about, like, having red hair, but it seems like they really do care that much. Clifford has like 20 red wigs because he can't be seen without his red hair. And Cheryl even gives us a little like legend about how his hair went gray. The legend is that Clifford saw the ghost of Grandpappy Blossom with his throat slit, and it shocked his hair white. That's pretty weird, but it keeps up with that whole family legacy theme that we've been talking about. Anyway, Polly and Cheryl end up working together to sneak into Cheryl's parents' bedroom. And that is where they discover that Cheryl's parents have the family heirloom engagement ring. So at that point, I freak out because I'm like, oh my God, is this the reveal? Like, is the reveal in this episode? Because how in the world could they possibly have that ring unless they killed Jason? Well, turns out they have an explanation. Apparently, the last time that Jason saw his parents before he died, he had this big fight with his dad about how he's done with the family, he's done with the family business, and then he takes the family heirloom ring and throws it in his dad's face. And at first I was like, that's not true. They made that up. But then something else happens at the end of the episode where I'm like, okay, I believe them. At the end of the episode, the cops are searching FP's trailer. They had received an anonymous tip, and so they got a warrant and went and searched the trailer. And so they get there, and FP's like, go ahead. I ain't got nothing to hide. So they search the trailer and find a gun, which FP seems genuinely surprised by. And we don't know for sure yet, but I'm assuming that this is the gun. Like, I think the gun is probably going to match the what gun killed Jason Blossom. And that does seem to be the case because we do find out that FP was arrested for the murder of Jason Blossom. Now, where this gets strange is that Archie and Veronica was actually investigating and searching FP's trailer a few hours before that, and there was no gun in that closet. Just mere hours before the cops found a gun in that closet, which means that FP is being framed. By who? My first guess, probably the real killer. Now, I know what you're thinking. Chase, what does this have to do with the Blossoms? Why does that make you think the Blossoms are innocent? Well, when the news reached the Blossoms about FP being arrested for the death of their son, Cheryl's mom is just like sobbing and just sobbing into her husband's chest. And she's just saying, I want him to die. I want him to die for what he did to our boy. Like, they seem genuinely shocked and just devastated about what happened, which leads me to believe that they were not involved with Jason's death, because this wasn't even like they were putting on a performance for other people. Like, I can't remember if it was Cheryl or Polly who was like, they were just like walking down the hallway and they just caught a glimpse of this happening. So like, this was a moment going on behind closed doors. So what does this mean for the mystery? Well, the leading theory with our characters in the show, you know, our in-show detectives, our mystery sleuths from Riverdale, Jughead, Archie, Betty, Veronica, they believe that Hiram Lodge hired FP to kill Jason Blossom. But we know pretty much for a fact that FP is being framed because that gun was not in the closet before the cops got there. And the whole reason that the cops showed up to FP's trailer is because they got an anonymous tip. I'm assuming that anonymous tip was from the person who planted the gun. And I'm gonna be honest here. I think that my theory about the long forgotten triplet is still in play. I think we just need to make some slight adjustments. Mostly my motive. I think my theory about the motive is wrong. We get a moment in these episodes where Clifford seems to think, you know what? He changes his mind. Cheryl is going to be taking over the family business. Like, for some reason, she has earned his respect and earned her spot. I don't know what she did because, you know, it was just like one episode ago that he was like, it's laughable to assume she could take over the company. But I digress. If he wasn't, you know, it seems like he's not going to try to find his abandoned son. It seems like he's just like, okay, well, we'll teach Cheryl the ropes. So then what is the motive for the forgotten triplet? I'm assuming revenge. Maybe the triplet just wants revenge for being abandoned. Maybe the triplet wasn't sent far, far away to be raised. Maybe the triplet just ended up in the south side of Riverdale, growing up poor, and, maybe growing up in such a environment led that forgotten triplet to join the Southside Serpents. And then when this Southside Serpent realized his true heritage, he realized he needed to make the Blossoms pay. Maybe he even killed Jason, not premeditated. Maybe it was just a moment of rage, just a moment of jealousy, causing him to act out in a way that he didn't think he would. Because Jason got the life that he was supposed to have. The money, the power, the red hair. And Jason was just going to throw it all away? Jason doesn't know how good he has it. The other adjustment I'm going to make to my theory is that the triplet is not Moose. The triplet is Joaquin. Why Joaquin? Well, Joaquin has become a pretty major side character that in the last half of this season has become, a major part of the show. And we know for a fact that Joaquin and FP are involved in Jason's murder to some capacity because they have Jason's jacket. And FP gives Joaquin the jacket and was like, hey, this is our insurance in case the cops show up. But then the cops show up and I don't know what happens next. They're just going to show the cops this jacket and be like, see, we're innocent. We have the dead kid's jacket. My theory is potentially FP, who, although he is a criminal, has a good heart. And maybe he sees Joaquin as another son to him. Joaquin's from the south side. He's one of his serpents. Maybe it's one of those things where FP feels like he let down and failed Jughead. He was like, well, maybe I can help this kid. I think Joaquin, in a fit of jealousy and rage, killed Jason Blossom and called FP to help him cover it up and to clean it up. Then something happens. Maybe something he learns from Kevin, his boyfriend, who's the son of the sheriff, makes him think, oh no, I'm about to get busted. So he panics, plants the murder weapon in FP's trailer, and calls in the anonymous tip, getting FP to take the blame for the murder. And even if FP snitches on him, are they really going to believe him? He's a repeat criminal who is a drunk and is found with the murder weapon. He's the leader of a criminal biker gang. Now, I know I have said this several times throughout this video, but I really feel like I nailed it this time. I can even see how the rest of it plays out. FP doesn't even bother telling the truth that it's Joaquin, either to continue to protect him or just because he knows that no one's gonna believe him. But Archie and Veronica know for a fact that that gun was planted. So they start unraveling the mystery and end up freeing FP, clearing his name. And of course they discover it was Joaquin all along. Someone who had been hanging out with them for weeks. Someone who was at every house party, every homecoming dance, hanging out at Pops, and this will be devastating for Kevin because Kevin finally found the only other openly gay guy in Riverdale. And they were in love, damn it. But just like in every teen drama, love can only end in one thing: heartbreak. And this heartbreak comes from the devastating news of learning that Joaquin killed Jason Blossom. And that is what I'm locking in. It's my same triplet theory, but replace Moose with Joaquin. Boom.
He's innocent.
He's being framed.
If you stay on this path, you will end up dead.
Well, the murder was solved in episode 12. There's 13 episodes in season 1. So I thought it would be revealed in episode 13. Well, I didn't get to do my whole shtick where I go through each and every suspect on the board and break down who it could or could not be. So my bad. I thought I had one more episode. Well, hey, that's okay. It was really cool. And let's see if my theory that I locked in the last part, let's see if I was right. Spoiler alert, wasn't even fucking close. Okay, so like we assumed, the gun that was found in FP's trailer, it matched the bullet that killed Jason Blossom. But Archie and Veronica tell Betty and Jughead about the gun not being there like an hour before the cops got there, which means that someone planted it. So while the four of them are trying to get someone to take them seriously, FP confesses. He's being questioned by the sheriff and he tells him what happened. FP says that Jason came to him looking for some money because he was trying to run away. So, in exchange for doing a drug run, FP was going to hook him up with a getaway car and some cash. Then, FP figured out that the kid asking him for money was actually Clifford Blossom's son. So, he kidnapped Jason in order to hold him ransom, to get money from his parents. So he's keeping him locked up in the basement of the biker bar where they all hang out for like a week. And then Jason tries to escape. He shoots and kills him. So I know what you're thinking, because here's the thing. Although it shocks me, there are people watching this video right now who have never seen Riverdale. Pretty wild, but I mean, I knew you guys were some freaks when I did 6 hours talking about Pretty Little Liars, and that show gets so complicated. And there were people in the comments like, I have no idea what's going on. I have never seen this show. So it's like, is that the big reveal? Is that it? No, it's not, because get this. FP also confesses to being the one that broke into the sheriff's house and stole all of his files, which we know for a fact was Betty's dad. So why would FP confess to a crime that he did not commit? So at this point of the episode, I'm feeling pretty good, right? Because I'm like, okay, FP, he's confessing for some reason. It's like he's trying to protect somebody. Maybe he's trying to protect Joaquin. Then we get an absolute wild reveal from Hal Cooper. Hal shows Betty and his wife, Alice, that he has the sheriff's files that were stolen from his house. And then he also reveals to them that the Coopers don't just hate the Blossoms because of the murder of great-grandfather Cooper. Oh no. Turns out the Coopers are Blossoms. Great-grandfather Cooper and great-grandfather Blossom were brothers. But after the murder, the brother who got murdered, his side of the family, they all changed their name to Cooper and didn't want nothing to do with the Blossom family. Guys, I don't think you understand. That means that Polly and Jason are blood related, which means that they're twins that are going to be born. Or, they come from an incest relationship. And that explains why Hal was so dead set against those babies being born. So then the Coopers, after they learn this information, the three of them, they go straight to the Blossoms mansion because they got to get Polly out of there because they think that they've just cracked this case. They show up and they're like, you sick freaks, you guys killed your own son because you found out about the incest. And the Blossoms are like, dude, what? No, dude. We love incest. And everyone's like, huh? And they're like, yeah, dude, what's more perfect than a baby that's all Blossom blood? Everyone's like, ew. And so now then at this point, I'm like, okay, so we know FP didn't do it. We know the Blossoms didn't do it because they were really excited about the incest. But then it's like, okay, the whole, we find out that the Coopers are Blossoms. And so I'm like, okay, well, maybe my triplet theory still works here. Like, this is still on theme for my theory, especially when the gang finds out that FP's one phone call after he's arrested was to Joaquin. And Joaquin, they go and they confront Joaquin along with Kevin, because Kevin's like, why is my boyfriend a criminal? And Joaquin tells them everything that he knows, which is on July 11th, he gets a call from FP that he needs help. Jason's body is there in the basement of the bar. He's been shot and killed. Joaquin helps him clean it up, gets rid of any evidence. They put the body in a freezer. And so Joaquin is like, I'm pretty sure FP killed Jason. I didn't ask, but it was pretty, it's pretty clear what had happened. And so I'm losing my mind at this point of the episode, right? Because I'm like, that's pretty much word for word, bar for bar, what I said in my theory, except roles reversed. And so I'm like, well, maybe Joaquin is telling the true story, but Joaquin just flipped the two roles, right? Instead of FP calling up Joaquin to come help him, maybe it was Joaquin who called up FP. But Joaquin is trying to frame FP, so he just switches the roles, right? So they're like, that's crazy. Let's go visit this other serpent named Mustang. Now, Mustang is the only other serpent and person who knew about this cleanup job of, Jason Blossom's death. So they're like, we got to go figure out what this guy knows. So they go to his motel room, and he's dead from an overdose in the bathtub. So the cops show up. They find Hiram Lodge's bag full of money underneath the bed. So that implicates that Hiram Lodge was the person who hired the serpents to kill Jason Blossom. So that's like, oh, mystery solved, but, Archie and friends aren't so sure. Joaquin gives Kevin one last piece of information before he gets on a bus and leaves town for good. And when he was leaving town, I was like, wait, no, baby, please, you're my murderer. I need you to stay. Don't go. But he left, which that's when I knew I was in trouble. But the information that Joaquin gives to Kevin is where the insurance plan was hidden, Jason's Letterman jacket. So Archie and Jughead and Betty and Veronica, they all go and they get the bag that has the Letterman jacket. They find there's a hole in the pocket. They look in the liner and there is a USB drive. And on this USB drive is the footage of Jason Blossom being killed. Any guess who killed him? Clifford Blossom. Hey, yo. Like, what the fuck? I was so off. I'm over here talking about a secret triplet who was sent away to the south side of Riverdale to be raised in poverty because they didn't have red hair. And he came back to town to kill the prodigal son. But nope, it just shows... Video just shows Clifford Blossom. He walks into the room. Jason's tied up. He takes the engagement ring out of his pocket, pops him with a gun. And that's pretty much where the episode ends. But episode 13, auto-played while I was still in shock over this reveal. And so I did watch, the first 3 minutes of episode 13, and which was very convenient because the first 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it was, gives us all of the info we need about what just happened. Turns out the Blossom's real business is not maple syrup. Oh no, the inside of the maple syrup barrels is heroin. And apparently Jason, who was being bred to take over the family business, found out that they're actually a heroin operation, and he just couldn't handle it. And that is why he wanted to run away so bad. I mean, along with wanting to be with Polly, but the Blossoms didn't seem to really care about the Polly thing. We love incest. So Jason is going to leave town to escape his family and the family business. Clifford has Jason kidnapped and Clifford kills him. Then Clifford goes to FP and says, I will kill your son Jughead if you do not take the blame for this. Then Clifford goes to Mustang, who's the only other person who knew about the whole situation, kills Mustang, makes it look like an overdose, and plants a bag with Hiram Lodge's initials on it with money to implicate his rival businessmen in the murder. He really thought of everything, and it was really just all coming together until Archie and Betty and Jughead and Veronica and their friends kept digging. They discovered the truth and they solved the case. And Archie learned how to be a singer-songwriter. So now the whole town knows what Clifford did. He killed his own son. So Clifford hangs himself in the barn. I gotta say, this was a great mystery, dude. I was way off, but I had a lot of fun watching this show. I mean, it was a pretty simple explanation that we should have seen coming. Definitely could have. I mean, we probably even did see coming at certain points, but they did a really great job of misdirecting away from the Blossoms every time a lot of suspicion was placed on them. Even there at the end, when they're like, you killed your own son. And they were like, we love incest. So yeah, I am going to watch episode 13. I'm not going to include it in this video. If anything, I will probably, as long as this video does well, I will be doing a Can I Solve Riverdale season 2. I'll probably just include my findings from episode 13 in that video. Speaking of future videos, I've got another video coming out very soon. It's another Can I Solve? I can't say what it is yet, but I think it's a good one. And for all of you who have been DMing me Instagram threats, saying if you don't get Pretty Little Liars Part 3, you're going to murder me like Jason Blossom. I promise you, Pretty Little Liars Part 3, it is coming. That show has so many episodes. It just takes time. But hey, thank you guys so much for watching this. This is one of my favorite videos I've made yet. Riverdale was a blast to watch. Yeah, dope. Thank you